Hello, everyone out there in podcast world. I hope you're having a great day. You're listening to the Service Business Mastery Podcast. I'm your host, Tersh. Today's episode is going to be a recap of year to date. Not really year to date. Since the last time we talked about IceBound. What we've done different, things we've changed, things that have worked, things that haven't worked. As you know, if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, I try to be as much of an open book as possible. Hopefully nothing that I say in here is in error. I'm going to try to be as 100% honest and open book as possible. Sometimes I honestly just forget things. So I wrote down a handful of topics, and we're going to talk about those things on today's episode. Okay, so topic number one is going to be pay structure. How I pay the guys. I get this question a lot in the groups, and we talk about things. I see it a lot on different Facebook groups. How do you pay your guys? What's the best way to pay your guys? What works? What doesn't work? How do you manage guys whenever you're getting paid a certain way? And I keep saying guys. I don't just mean males. That's just what I say for my teammates. Men and women in the field and in the office. I'm not going to dig down this rabbit hole, not right this second, but we're 100% remote. So if you haven't listened to this podcast for very long, you may not know that. We're 100% remote, 100% paperless. We're in the cloud for every single thing. If you send something via snail mail to me, it's going to get scanned and put into the cloud. The pay structure for my dispatcher is a salary. It's a salary plus commission base pay. She will make just shy of $50,000 this year. That's the goal anyways. Well, my goal is for her to make a lot more than that, but that's what the pay structure is set up for her. I'll go into detail with that in a minute. First, I'm going to get started with the technicians, the install crews. So we sub installs out, but any installs we do in-house, we pay piecemeal. So they're just paid a flat fee for whatever they put in. It equates to about, if they do a change out in 8 hours, it equates to about $45 an hour. They enjoy that, I guess. But they have to jump through hoops, probably, is what most technicians would consider it. I require pretty strenuous things to be completed. I want the jobs to look good. And then they must report, measure quick report. I need to see that the systems are being pulled under 500 microns and a decay test is performed. Pressure tests are performed. As you know, if anybody listens to the HVAC Shop Talk and you've watched any of Zach's videos, you know that the decay test isn't 100% foolproof, but I still like to be able to sleep better at night knowing that the decay test was performed and I've done my due diligence to make sure that the system's not leaking before we commission it and give it to the customer. Blue painter's tape, if nobody's using that, use it. I make them put blue painter's tape on the units before they mastic it. And then we started doing something different. Give me your feedback on this. Let me know what you think about it. But we actually take and spray foam the plenums now. It's something that I learned from Adam. He's out on Charleston, Adam Flaherty. He's been on the podcast before. I was at his house whenever they were first getting a system put in this past summer or spring. My son was there in Charleston at a soccer tournament, and I stopped by his place and I checked out his system, and they spray foamed his duct system, and I thought that was a really cool idea. So spray foam looks kind of goofy whenever you're putting it in or spraying it on duct systems and everything, and it's a cool concept, like really cool concept. It's not going anywhere ever. So you don't have to worry about duct leakage issues, which is really cool concept in my opinion, but it looks really goofy. So what I like to do is take some plastic and then have blue painter's tape with the plastic and like cover the whole unit up, because overspray is crazy on that. And then tape it off, spray foam it, and then pull the painter's tape off, and then it's like a perfect line, and it looks like it goes from this perfectly smooth AC unit to this rough spray foam. It's kind of cool. Nice little contrast. Nobody's really going to get up there and ooh and ah over your AC unit, but I don't know. Taking pride in workmanship, that's part of the craftsman side of me, I guess. Before and after pictures of the units, I like to have them. I don't post them as much as I should. A lot of people say that my social media game is on point, but I could kind of argue with that a little bit. I do share about 150-ish articles a week. They're different articles I've read, but just a little trick in that. I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole either, because that's a different topic. Social media is so easy if you pay a program like Meet Edgar, $20 or $30 a month, and it will actually put out 5 different copies. Well, why am I I'm having a brain fart. 5 different versions of the same article for any kind of article that you put out there. And then it posted on several different social media sites. So you have LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and then you put the RSS feed into the system, and then you read the article and then approve it, and then it shares it up to 5 different times. So you have a lot of touch on different sites. And also you can put it on any of your pages. You just can't put it on your personal page, which kind of stinks, because there's some really cool articles I'd like to share to like friends and family, but it doesn't do personal. It only does your pages and your groups, which it's all right. It's cool. And then with our actual blog post on the website, it will post those instantly. So as soon as I put it up, it posts it up to 5 different times on several different pages and sites and stuff. So kind of get it shared out there. One other thing really quick. Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize in advance. I'm just really excited about this. I was at an event a couple months ago, and somebody mentioned this. It was one of the marketing companies, really, really great guy, Chris over at Rhino Media. We've become friends since then, but if you post a new page on your site, tweet the link. You can tell I'm not a Twitter person. Tweet the link, and then Google will pick it up quicker, and so you'll get ranked faster for that. Just a little tip or trick that I learned from Chris. With that being said, let me actually get into what this topic is supposed to be about, and that's the pay structure of the technicians. So the pay structure works this way. Every tech makes $10 an hour. That's just like their base pay. That's what I call it, is their base pay. And then we go from there. So if you work 40 hours, you're getting paid 40 hours times $10 an hour. If you work 30 hours, you're getting paid $10 an hour for 30 hours. If you work 42 hours, then your regular 40 hours is $10 an hour. Your 2 hours after the fact is time and a half. So it's $15 an hour for each hour. So it's just like normal pay. It's just $10 an hour. So here's where it kind of gets complicated for some people. So some people it's not. It's really easy once you've done it a couple of times, or if you write it down on paper, it's even easier. But for every billable hour that you have, I pay an additional $18 an hour, $15 an hour, $10 an hour, $20 an hour, whatever the additional pay is. So if a technician bills out 40 hours and works 40 hours, and their base pay is $10 an hour, and then their billable hours, their billable pay is $18 an hour, then they're making $28 an hour for the 40 hours that they worked and billed. It rarely ever works out that way, but they're usually billing about 35 hours for every 40 hours they work. Most of the time, that's about what they're doing. And they average, so one guy's $18 an hour for billable hours, and the other guy's $15 an hour for billable hours. If they were both on hourly, they would be $15 and $18 an hour guys. So it's not like I'm taking a $30 an hour guy and bumping him back to, this pay. If it was a $30 an hour guy, I would pay him $10 an hour base pay and then $30 an hour for billable pay. Most likely, that's how I feel like I would do it. So far, it's been great. And for all of us, because there were a lot of times where when we were really slow, like February, March, April, like really slower than I've probably ever been before, because it was a mixture of a lot of combinations, which I'll go into later. I was paying out more than what I was collecting by a long shot throughout those months, in payroll and payroll taxes and stuff like that. So it really brought to light how little they were billing out during those times and how much time they were spending on the clock. With that being said, if they do training, I pay a flat $20 an hour for training. Like I said, I don't have anybody that makes $30 an hour. So it's not a pay cut for anybody currently. And I don't know what I'll do if I do have somebody on the payroll that's worth $30 an hour. I don't know what I'll do as far as when it does come training time. I just want to make sure that they're not reprimanded for training. So like if you have somebody that's making $20 or $30 an hour, and then you tell them, okay, while you're training, you only get paid $10 an hour, then they're not going to be super excited about going to a week-long training course, So my thought is that if I do it $20 an hour for the hours that they're training, then it's not as good as billing, like if they were actually on the job site billing and everything like that, because I don't want that to be the case either. I don't want them to be like, hey, send me to 6 months worth of training and paying me $30 an hour. So that's kind of my thought process with that, paying them $20 an hour versus paying them $28 an hour for any time that they're training. I give out spiffs still. I spiff out just like any other spiff program. If they replace a secondary P-trap and add a float switch, they get $20, I think. A contactor, capacitor. They can't be the result, like they can't be the reason for the service call. But if you go out there and you find a weak capacitor, if you find a pitted contactor that's actually causing damage, is dropping voltage across the contactor, and you replace it, you get a $10 spiff for each one of those items, plus you get your billable hours, plus you get everything else. Your time on the site. For maintenance agreements, for a 1-year maintenance agreement, you're getting $5. For a 2-year maintenance agreement, you're getting $10. For a 3-year maintenance agreement, you're getting $20. What did I say? 5, 10, and 15. Sorry. And so just like your normal spiffs, they're still getting those. If they sell a system, I'm still giving commission for sales. The techs are getting 4% commission for anything that they sell. And then I'm working a bonus structure. So we have a bonus structure also. And that is kind of complicated. Not really, but it's a monthly structure. And as long as their labor percentage stays below 30% of the job, then they get either a 2, I'm sorry, let me start over. They get a 1.5% a 2% or a 2.5% bonus on the total revenue generated for that month, as long as their labor percentage stays below 30% of the total revenue generated. So that's a lot, I know, and you probably need to write it all down. And I don't 100% know that it's scalable, because when I'm doing hourly payroll, and I use ADP for payroll, when I was just doing hourly and I was paying the guys $18 and $15 an hour, it literally would take me like 10 minutes to do payroll, maybe. Now that 10 minutes has turned into like a solid 45 minutes to an hour, which is still not bad for a full week's payroll. But if I had 20 or 30 service techs, I could see that being kind of confusing and complicated. Another thing that I've kind of done to help that out is that on Sunday afternoon, everybody gets an email with their last week's billable hours, and that's automatically sent out by Service Titan. So the technicians know, like, if their billable hours are way off or if they're right, because they can keep track of what their billable hours are on each service call. But then when they get their email at the end of the week, then they can compare their numbers versus the numbers on there, and can come to me really quickly and say, hey, these are right or these are wrong. And they also get their timesheets emailed to them that day too, and they sign off on them and send them to me, letting me know, hey, there was a big, error in my timesheet, versus, no, it looks right to me. And then they just, go about their way. It's not like I take it like blindly and just put it into the system. I still double check everything, but it's really cool to have that automation every Sunday, being able to send that out to the technicians so they have an idea. They know what their hours are going to be, and then everything has to be fixed and finalized by Wednesday. So that's all I have for pay structure. If you have any questions about pay structure, feel free to reach out to me. That's kind of the next topic I'll talk about, is kind of automation. So with the automation, a lot of people have taken me up on my offer of just sending me an email testing out my autoresponder. And it's been really cool. I've had a lot of really cool conversations with those people, and thank y'all for reaching out to me. It's been cool. I've had some really awesome feedback. I've had lots of service techs actually doing it, and that was really a surprise to me. So thank y'all for reaching out, and service techs that are considering starting their own business. As you know, that's what this podcast is for, kind of answer some of those unanswered questions or unasked questions. And the technicians that have reached out, anybody that's reached out, it's been really cool, because one guy actually, he reached out and mentioned that when he heard me say test out the autoresponder, he was like, why would I use that? And then I think it was the next day, he said someone sent him an email and then sent him another email, or two more emails back to back within 15 minutes. And the last email was kind of like question marks, like waiting for the reply. And then he put in the autoresponder, and it's just short and simple. And if anybody's tested it, you know that it's just very basic. Hey, look, I'm doing, I only check my emails twice a day, or something. That I haven't even looked at my own auto reply in a while. But it's just something simple that, hey, look, I check my emails twice a day. If you need assistance immediately, please call the office. And then I actually have one set up internally also. So if anybody with the same email address as I do, or same domain in their email address, it sends them one that says, hey, if this is an emergency, please text me, because I only check my emails a couple times a day. In reality, I probably check my emails way too much, but at least now with that autoresponder, the client's set up for success. So the client knows that, hey, they only check their email twice a day. So if he doesn't get back to me until this afternoon, then that's fine. And if it is an emergency, then I'll reach out to the office and see if I can't get something taken care of. And I give them an office number. And just so you know this, with Service Titan, we have tracking numbers, and the number that is attached to that auto reply, the phone number is tracked. So I know exactly how many times somebody calls the office from that auto response through Outlook. I use Outlook. A lot of my friends and colleagues, they use Google Suite, the G Suite. I like G Suite. Like personally, 100% G Suite fan. The Outlook is priced more expensive, but the more I use it, the more it's like, oh man, I don't know if I could go without it now. Because of us being 100% paperless, we all have the access to Word documents, Excel documents, all that stuff. I don't have to keep getting it updated versions on desktops, which is really cool. And then they have Teamwork, which I haven't dove down into, but I'm really thinking about diving into Teamwork pretty heavily, because I've been seeing and hearing a lot of really cool things about Teamwork, which is included in the Office 365 suite package. And then the G Suite's really cool because anything Google related, it just pops it in there really fast. So when I'm doing like YouTube videos and anything with the Google My Business, I have to put in a different email address than what the IceBound email address, because it doesn't like the IceBound email address at all. So that's why I was really considering the G Suite too. And then the G Suite is also like half the price too. But I don't know if it's one of those things where it's worth the price of admission. I guess it's one of those things like we raise hell about cheap customers, and then we're going to be cheap ourselves. But also, you got to watch your costs when you're running a business. Small businesses, they will drain you for some cash. That's for sure. I was at an event recently, and Ari Mizell was the speaker. And when I say event, there was like 25 of us there. So it was like a super intimate event. It was almost like Jason Gaynard, like dinner, mastermind dinner. It was really cool. And for those of you who do not know who Ari is, he has written several books. The last one was called The Replaceable Founder, and is basically how to replace yourself as the business owner by using automation. And there's some really good stuff there. If you don't know who he is, check him out. Read his book. Read the latest book that just came out. Really cool stuff. And he gave tips and tricks on using Outlook and how to set up, clean up your inbox, that type of stuff, automation, using Trello as an automation tool, and then just all kinds of different automation, training automation. There's this program that he recommended, which I haven't used it at all. It's called process.st. And basically it's a training program. So for those of you who know, like I do all of my training programs online, like for my whole team. So I save them all on YouTube, and if anybody has a question about anything, they can just go to YouTube and there's a link. They're all unlisted. So I have hundreds of videos, but I only think I have one published video on YouTube for IceBound. But process.st, and then there's another program called Tranual, TrainUal. And these programs are basically training programs that if you have a question, you just search for this video and then it goes through the training process. So your processes and procedures, they're all saved there instead of on YouTube. The event I was at was at Michael Aguilera's place up in New Jersey. And one of the things he mentioned was that if you rely on YouTube like we do, at any point, YouTube can take the video down. They own the video. It's all their stuff. And I never really thought about it like that, but YouTube is free. Whereas like process.st is $15 per month per user for the business plan. And then Trainual is $79 per month up to 25 employees, and then $159 if you have up to 100 employees. And I mean, they're really cool. It's really great training programs. I think it might be worth the investment, but we are pretty small, so that goes back to watching your job cost. I mean, watching your cost in general as a small business. It's something that I think is a really good investment eventually, but not quite for us just yet. And I hate to be that guy to say that, but I think that it's something that I'll definitely do in the future. So that kind of leads me into the next topic, and that is CEO Warrior, Mike Aguilera. I went to the SBE conference, which is the Service Business Edge event, and it was really good. I mean, if anybody's friends with me on Facebook, you saw the engagement that I had. I'm usually a extreme introvert, I guess is the best way to say it, even though I am on a podcast and we have 10,000 people downloading it every month. It's still, for me to come out and actually talk to people is usually kind of a weird scenario for me. But going to that event, I was standing on tables, dancing and shaking pom-poms and whatnot, but it's definitely a very energized experience. And Mike's actually an extreme introvert too. If you've ever seen him on social media, like he seems very outgoing, but he's a very, very much an introvert, just like myself. So it was pretty cool to see him and learn about him and his experiences and everything he's gone through. He and his business partner, Rob Zadati, grew a business, and they were doing $32 million, I think they were, when they sold. And it's a really cool program. He goes through and explains everything that they did through their business and how it worked for them and how to make it work for you. It's multi-trade type stuff, but it's still one of those things where he's an open book. He'll tell you point blank if it worked for him or didn't work for him, which is it's really cool because you talk to some coaches out there and they've never experienced it in the field. Like they've never experienced how to grow to $10 million. So they're telling you how to do a $10 million job, and then they can't truly tell you all the experiences that they've had with the $10 million. I don't know. It's kind of one of those things. I use High Growth Coach also. So that's Nick and Anthony. Great program. They are very much marketing people, and they're very, very good at marketing. And I don't think that you need to have just one person as your mentor. I think you can take aspects from several different people. So I have used High Growth Coach and CEO Warrior successfully. I think they both have their own place. I think that they are both extremely valuable. And if you are interested in business coaching, they're both very great programs to look into. Not every program fits every person or company. I've used BDR in the past. I did not pay for them with IceBound or TriStar. I did it whenever I started in 2005 and was using them until like 2010-ish, 11-ish, whenever I left that company. And I was the service manager, worked up to general manager, and I followed a lot of what BDR's principles are, and it's a really great program. I have some friends who use BDR right now, and I have some friends who outgrew BDR. Like they literally started with BDR and grew so successfully that they got to the point to where they were too large for BDR, which is a really cool accomplishment. And as a coach, I think that that's a really cool thing. Like to say, look, you're too big for me now. You've grown so much that and you've been so successful that there's not much else that I can offer you So it's kind of a bittersweet thing, but really cool fact that, they went and grew to something like 40 or $50 million. I don't know how big they grew, but they were massive to the point to where they were too big for BDR. So BDR can if you follow their procedures and policies and implement everything, they can definitely get you where you want to go. Praxis S10, I don't know that group, but I've heard some pretty good things about it. Gene Slade, he's does phenomenal stuff with technicians and stuff like that, and getting your average ticket prices up there. He has a really cool program. Those are the main coaches that I know of. But I decided to use High Growth Coach because their program, they're like honest, like brutally honest to a fault with what will and what, like, just an open book, I guess the best way to say it. Their program is really cool. It's just a Kajabi program that you go through on your own pace. They can see how far you've done. They constantly update it. They constantly do mastermind talks and everything else. For the fee that it costs to do that program, it is so cheap for what you get out of it. If you don't make $1 million within the first year, it's purely because you didn't follow their procedures. That's the God's honest truth. That's what I believe. If you do everything that they say, you'll definitely you'll increase revenue by a ton. Same with CEO Warrior. Like, I went to an event there and came away with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of revenue ideas. They could be implemented instantly. And that's the reason why I ended up signing up with them. And so I'm in the program. I believe in the program. I think that I truly believe that you should surround yourself with the 5 people that you surround yourself with the most. That's who you're going to be like. And I don't want to surround myself with a bunch of local guys that are just complainers and like, the next guy in the truck, Chuck in the truck, he's running the prices down, blah, 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 blah. There's people in both of these groups that are in all different markets, and they're all generating top dollar numbers. I have friends that are in the Miami market that are, that's a tough market. South Florida is a tough market. They have a really bad problem with unlicensed contractors, and it's not uncommon. I've heard them doing full system changeouts for $3,500. Like, that's average ticket prices. And then everybody expects 16 SEER equipment, which is crazy. I mean, our 16 SEER equipment, you're gonna spend $7,000-8,000 at least with us for 16 SEER. And like, their average ticket price is $3,500 because that's what the market is down there. And so, like, it's just to hear people that are in that market and then they increase their average ticket prices to something comparable to ours, and still stay busy and booked out. Those are really good coaching programs. So if you want to try something that I've tried and it's worked, those are 2 programs that are really good, 3 programs that are really good. Give Gene a call. He's got a really good coaching program for service techs, but I don't get paid for any of that stuff. That's just my honest opinion on those programs. I've tried a couple of other ones that I won't recommend, but I won't mention them on this program either, because I told them that the faults that they had with their programs, and they said they're going to fix them. And I also said that I wouldn't badmouth them on the program. So this year, well, that kind of leads into the next 2 topics, which is my focus this year, IceBound's focus this year. So in January, we kind of, even in December, we really were taking steps backwards on purpose. So at the end of last year, we generated something like $720,000, but then we fired 2 clients that both of those clients I think we generated at least 250,000 probably from each one of those clients. So we fired $500,000 worth of the revenue we generated last year. And it's, as asinine as that sounds and seems, we really wanted to focus on culture. Those people were really dragging us down. They made us hate life. Like you come into work and you're like, oh, that's who's calling us today. It's like, this is horrible. Like I could literally go get a job somewhere and be better off, even if they're paying us $250,000 a year. Like I totally just hated life listening to the phones ring and hearing that it was them. And I didn't even have to go on the service call. I didn't have to deal with the people. It was just bringing our whole team down. So I really wanted to focus on our culture internally and externally, and also looking at profits. We generated a lot of revenue from those companies, but they really watched the numbers. So profits were not the best in the world, and the only way I could take 2 steps forward was by taking 1 step backwards, and I knew that. As it's been painful, like it's been excruciatingly painful, because during our old slow months, it was still not uncommon to do, I don't know, $50,000, $100,000. Nah, not $100,000, $50,000 during a slow month. But then you go into January and February and you're barely doing 20,000 because you fired the people that would keep you busy during those months. That's a gut wrenching feeling. I know some people listening have felt the same way. But I just want to be as open and honest as I could be. It really sucked, to say the best. I mean, that's putting it the best way. But what it did also do was I had a couple of technicians who were decent, but they weren't A players. They probably weren't even B players. They were solid C's, and it gave me the opportunity to let go of those guys. And we never let go of them in a bad way. We didn't, it wasn't any hard feelings. I'm still friends with them. But it was just one of those things where we were like, you're not, when it's time to get it going, like when it's time to go, you're not going to be up for the task. Like you're struggling and we're slow. So it's time for us to find you a new place to work. And so we did. We, reached out to some friends in the industry, and made it happen. So there's no hard feelings. They're happier where they are, I think. We're happier where we are, I know. And we've hired more people. Actually, today is the first day of a new dispatchers. And so she's had some questions. We've done some Zoom calls, and gone over a few things. She's doing training programs right now with Service Titan, which is really cool. They have their training program online. So the culture is, and it's funny because some people say, if you don't have a warehouse, if you don't have an office, how do you build culture? We still have a very strong culture within our business, and we still talk. We communicate a ton throughout the day. Whether it's using a program like Slack or video chats or Zoom, still doing. During the summertime, we don't do it as often because I value the guys' time, but we still spend time meeting and having lunch or coffee or breakfast. And those events, we try to make them as uplifting and fun. We never do anything negative at those events. We don't do any kind of, hey, you sucked last month type things, but we still try to have that meeting once a week. As during the slow season, definitely we do it once a week. And even if it's just to grab a cup of coffee and hang out for a few minutes, even the dispatcher will come to those events. In the past, Mark, our past dispatcher that we forced to accept another job that was kind of his dream job, I told him that he'd be fired if he didn't accept the job when he came to me and asked me about it. he was at the breakfast events. He would come and hang out with us and everything. And we're still really good friends with Mark. All of us, we see him all the time, and he gives us shout outs all the time on the radio, which is cool. And it's because of those relationships that we've developed. And instead of harboring ill feelings whenever he left, it was, look, we're going to harbor ill feelings if you stay, because this is what you came to us whenever you first started. You said that this was your dream job, and now it's a reality, so you better take it. And then lastly, Wit Digital. So I swapped over from Marketing 360 and then moved over to Wit Digital. Marketing 360 is a big box marketing agency. They probably can do what you need them to do if you'll pay them a lot more than what we were paying. We were paying like $2,000 a month, I think, and we were not getting much at all. Literally, like I had 2 months there where they didn't spend any money out of our pay-per-click ad fund, and which it was just so frustrating. And I was friends with Steve Christopher. He was on the podcast last year. I had already signed the contract with Marketing 360 whenever I met Steven. And we're also not like their ideal client. So it was one of those things where I didn't want him to take us on just because we're friends. And then he kind of seen what we were dealing with. I'd ask questions. I ask a lot of questions, as you can tell with the interviews and whatnot. But they worked out a little program so that they could bring us on. And you're going to hear a lot more from Wit, whether it's Steven or anybody on their team. You're going to hear them on the podcast, because we're going to start doing like a once a month follow-up on what they're doing on our website. And it's not an advertisement for Wit Digital. It's more so like tips and tricks on things that can be done to optimize your website that you can do, or you can have your marketing agency do, just to speed things, to help speed up your move to number one. A lot of people are saying like SEO is dead, and I'll tell you, since going over to Wit Digital, about 40% of our service calls are now coming from Google, and that's kind of weird because all they've done was optimize the website. They haven't changed the content. They haven't done anything crazy. They just optimized what was already there. And we went from 1 to 2 phone calls a month from the website. And I kept being told, like, it's long game. It's going to take 6 months for this to work, and blah, 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 blah. And I knew that. I know that SEO is kind of a long game thing where it takes 6 months to do things, but it's been like a month, maybe 2 months now with Wit Digital, and we're getting tons of calls from Google. Granted, it is the summer. I understand that, and you're going to get phone calls anyways, but when people are Googling air conditioning company in Savannah and we're coming up on the first page, like that's kind of a big deal to me anyways, whenever for 6 months they couldn't do that at the last company, but they were taking the money from me every single month for sure. So I wholeheartely believe in what Wit's doing, and Steven and his whole team. And not only that, the amount of giving back that they do to everybody in the service industry, like that's their focus. Like that's the only people they work with are service-based companies. And so for them to give back as much as they do is really cool. Even though they're not ideal customers, they still will stop and answer the questions that they might have. That's kind of what sold me on Wit. And Steven's actually who pushed me to go out to SBE for CEO Warrior, which was really cool. He was out there, and we got to hang out some at that event, and we've become really good friends since then. So I want to thank Steven for that, and like everybody at Wit Digital. Man, they send me a video like just randomly through the week, hey man, we just seen this was happening on the website, and LSA. I had a question about LSA and the Google services and being Google guaranteed and all that stuff. And within like 2 hours, I get a little video chat, and then we're scheduled to do a Zoom call together and answer questions about it and what it is, how to make it happen, and next thing you know, it's all done. And like they just the sense of urgency is there, and it's just like boom, get it done. So I'm glad I didn't make a longer list. I was writing it down, and I was like, this might not be enough stuff to talk about. But there's a lot of other things that we've done differently, but we're running up on the 45-minute hour or times. So I don't want to bore anybody. If anybody has any questions about anything that I've said or mentioned, don't hesitate to reach out to me. My email is tersh@icebound.us. And don't forget, if you want to just try out that auto reply, the autoresponder that I have, just put it in the subject line. Testing out your autoresponder or something to that effect. It turns into a conversation 90% of the time, but that's cool. Also on social media, if you want to follow me, hook up on social media, whatever, just slide into the DMs. Or whatever. I'm just kidding. It's at Tershplicit most everywhere. I don't think that it's anything anywhere else. Anywhere on any social media, I think it's at Tershplicit. Follow IceBound's page if you want to see what we're doing on social media. Also, we are working on a pretty strict social media schedule that we're coming out with, hopefully by the end of next week. And so it'll probably be, it might even slow down content a little bit, but it'll be more consistent content being put out. If you have any questions about anything that I do social media wise, let me know. Currently I use Meet Edgar, but Buffer is also a great program to use. With that being said, I hope you have a wonderful week, and don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions about anything that I've talked about or any of the guests that have ever been on the program. I still have conversations and relationships with most everybody that I've had on the podcast. So I hope you have a wonderful week. And thank you again for listening to the Service Business Mastery Podcast, the podcast focused on service business owners, managers, and technicians who are considering becoming business owners themselves. We'll talk again next week.